Yes, the boys and the girls. The guys and the gals. Right, I'm currently at Crossfields Industrial Estate. I've come down to show PJS Autos some love for sponsoring this video. And PJS Autos, for anyone that's unaware, is on Crossfields Estate. If you follow this little map thing that I've just put in the video, then you shouldn't be able to miss it. Also, next week I think I'm in Cannock, so keep an eye out for me, for anyone that sponsored the videos, and I'll pop into your shop or your massage parlour over the next couple of days. If you're one of the first 5 customers that mention this video, I've left a gift for you behind the counter. So I need you to say, I've come here because of Bazabilo's video, and then Dan or Mark will give you a gift from me. There's only 5, so it's the first 5 people that ask for that mention the videos or get one of the gifts. I was meant to write a little note as well, but obviously, like an idiot, I've come down here without a pen, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. I apologise for the sound as well. I can't seem to connect my microphone to this brand new all singing, all dancing camera that you all own 10% of. I'll figure it out when I can be asked. Anyway, Beacon Place, let's get into it, guys. Beacon Place during the Seckham years was not only used as a private home. The house and grounds also became the setting for some of the largest social occasions held in Lichfield during the late 19th century. In August of 1891, more than 500 employees of the Northampton Brewery Company were invited to spend the day at Beacon Place. They travelled by train to Trent Valley Junction and then made their way to the estate. A decorated arch had been placed at the entrance to welcome them in, and a large marquee stood on this green slope in front of the mansion. From here, visitors could look across the grounds and down towards the water below the house. Food was provided on a large scale, and a military band was played during the day. Some of the guests joined in with games and dancing, while others made their way down the slope to fish. The weather was not especially kind because the rain interrupted parts of the afternoon, but the event carried on. As evening arrived, the gathering ended with fireworks over the estate. This gives us a picture of Beacon Place while it was full of people, with hundreds of visitors moving through the grounds and gathering in front of the mansion. 2 years later, the house was used for another enormous occasion, although the atmosphere was very different. In November of 1893, Samuel and Mrs. Seckham hosted a ball, attended by between 250 and 300 guests. Because the mansion itself could not comfortably hold such a large crowd, a temporary ballroom was built on this lawn. The structure measured around 60 feet by 30 and was connected directly with the winter garden and drawing room. This meant that the ballroom had become an extension of the house rather than a separate building standing away from it. Guests moved through the drawing room, library, billiard room and winter garden throughout the evening. The temporary ballroom was decorated with mirrors and flowers and lit by electricity, while the house and grounds were illuminated. Supper was served in the dining room and morning room, with further refreshments arranged in the billiard room. The whole place shows how Beacon Place could be opened out and adapted for occasions far larger than everyday domestic life. By the end of the 1890s, Samuel Seckham's time at Beacon Place was beginning to draw to a close. In February 1898, an auction was announced after he changed his residence. The sale included a large amount of furniture from the house. Amongst it was the dining furniture, the bedroom fittings and a full-size billiard table. A collection of paintings was also offered for sale. Among the best-known names mentioned was Angelica Kaufman. The wording of the advert does not prove that Beacon Place itself had already been sold, but it does show that Samuel had moved elsewhere and was disposing of much of what he'd filled the house with during his occupation. Even after that move, Beacon Place continued to be used for important events. In July 1898, a military bazaar was held there and formally opened by the Duchess of Sutherland. This should not be confused with the later military use of the mansion. At that stage, it was a public or fundraising occasion, rather than evidence that the army had taken control of the building. Beacon Place remained in private occupation until the early 20th century. In January 1913, Mrs. Vaughan Williams placed an advert in the Mercury. She was seeking a boy of about 15 years old to help with the housework, clean motor cars and carry out other jobs around the property. It's a small notice, but it shows how life at the estate had changed. The household had once depended on horses and carriages and now entered the age of the motor car, although the old mansion remained in use. The Seckham family was still connected with Beacon Place during the First World War. Samuel's third son, Gerald James Thorne Seckham, had a son named Gerard Adair Seckham. Gerard Adair was educated at Rugby and Sandhurst before joining the East Lancashire Regiment in 1912. He later served in South Africa before travelling with his regiment to the Western Front. On the 6th of January 1915, Lieutenant Gerard Seckham was killed in action, only a few days before his 22nd birthday. Contemporary reports described him as the only son of Mr. and Mrs. Gerard Seckham of Beacon Place. That loss brought the war directly into the history of the estate. Beacon Place remained associated with a prominent local family, but one of its young men had died overseas before reaching the age of 22. The mansion later entered a completely different stage of its history. In 1922, the War Department purchased Beacon Place together with around 10 acres of the surrounding land, and from that point onwards the building ceased to function mainly as a private country residence, and instead became part of the military organisation based in Lichfield. By 1949, Beacon Place was serving as the headquarters of an infantry brigade within the Territorial Army. A newspaper report from that year advertised for an officer connected with the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers to take up a post there. That confirms the mansion remained in active military use after the Second World War. It had not simply been abandoned at the end of the conflict, and the old rooms were still serving an official purpose. The building also continued to host occasional large gatherings. In April of 1597, a whist drive was advertised at Beacon Place, showing that people were still meeting there only a few years before the house disappeared. A whist drive was a social card-playing evening, often organised by a club or used as a fundraiser. It may seem modest compared with the enormous garden fetes, or the grand ball of the Second period, but it shows that Beacon Place still had a place in local life during its final years. The mansion was flattened in 1964 after serving as a private home, a social venue and a military headquarters. The house was finally cleared from the site. The redevelopment that followed happened quickly. By May 1967, roads had already been laid out, and plans were moving forward for 45 houses and 6 flats on the former Beacon Place site. By December of that year, the development was being advertised as an exclusive place to live beside Beacon Park. The new properties were modern detached houses and bungalows, but the old name was retained. In 1969, newspaper advertisements described it as Lichfield's top address. The name that had once belonged to a country mansion was now being used to sell modern homes built across the same ground. There's a clear contrast between those two versions of Beacon Place. Only a few years earlier, the name had referred to a mansion with oak floors and a winter garden, standing above its own landscaped estate. By the end of the decade, it referred to a new residential development. The house itself has gone, but its history has not disappeared entirely. The position of the mansion can still be identified through historic maps, while parts of the former estate can still be understood through the shape of the land around Beacon Park. Christchurch remains as one of the strongest surviving links between the families who lived at Beacon Place. Ellen Jane Hinckley's tomb still stands beside the church she helped create, while the second name remains attached to the modern road built close to the mansion site. The story of Beacon Place reaches into several different parts of Lichfield's history. It connects the sleeping children inside the cathedral with the building of Christchurch, and it allows us to understand the social world of the city during the late Victorian period. The same house later became connected with wartime loss and military administration, before finally giving way to the development that occupies the site today. If you would have snapped up one of these houses just after it was built, you would have got it for around £6,000. Beacon Place may no longer exist as a building, but once its story is understood, the former estate becomes much easier to recognise within modern Lichfield.